This content is being produced by the podcast Bourbon Real Talk. The usual show format is to do a live review of a whiskey with a guest who tells their personal story. The purpose is to expose the world to the lives of people they may not have otherwise come in contact with. The goal is to reduce division and form new connections. Occasionally, we produce content that is meant to be educational like this program. For more information about Bourbon Real Talk, you can go to our website at bourbonrealtalk.com, where you can sign up for our email list, or we can be found on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Play, and iTunes by searching Bourbon Real Talk. Enjoy. Hello there, Bourbon Real Talk family. Coming to you again with another episode of Drink This, Not That, for your viewing pleasure. So I know a lot of you guys out there, you've been drinking whiskey for a while, you've got your go-to pour that you love, and you're starting to get a little bit whiskey curious, and you're thinking of, what else might I try that I would like, right? And what we're going to talk about today is Maker's Mark. Maker's Mark is an amazing product, high quality whiskey. A lot of people love it, and I have a hilarious Maker's Mark story for you guys. Actually, I'll just go ahead and tell it. So couple, I guess year and a half, 2 years ago, I went to dinner with my wife and another couple, and I told the waitress that I wanted something special to drink and asked what they had behind the bar that was, maybe a little more rare, a little more special, nothing that was bottom shelf. And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, no Jim, no Jack, no Makers, no Turkey." And she said, "Oh, it breaks my heart to hear you say that that Makers is bottom shelf." And I said, "Oh, I don't mean it like that. I love Makers." I said, we just want something rare or special." And it turns out that she was Bill Samuel Jr.'s granddaughter, and she happens to work here at a restaurant in Dallas, and I put my foot in my mouth. So don't do that. So if you're a Maker's Mark fan and you're thinking about trying something else, there's a couple different directions you could go. One direction you could go is to their upline. So Maker's Mark has some premium products. They've got two different versions. They've got their cask strength version, which is just where they take the whiskey, they don't water it down after the maturation process, and they bottle it. The other thing they do is they have some finished whiskeys where they take different types of oak that have been toasted to various levels, and they submerge oak staves inside the whiskey after it's finished aging. And they've got the Maker's 46, which is the proof down version. And then there's this product, which is called the Maker's Mark Private Select. And this is where a store or a restaurant or a club has gone in and selected what oak staves they want to soak in the barrel to change the whiskey's flavor. And if you look on the back of each one, it'll tell you there's 5 different potential oak staves that you could use, and it tells you which one were used and how many of each one. So if there's just check marks, it was an equal distribution of the 10 available. Now, if you want to go beyond Maker's Mark and try something else, you might be loving Maker's Mark because it is a wheat whiskey. And wheat whiskey, so typically bourbon mash bills are somewhere in the, 65 to 80%, 85% corn range. And then there's what they call the flavor grain. And then most of them have some malted barley, which affects the pH. It's not really there for flavor. The flavor grain of almost all bourbons is rye. But there are a category of bourbons called wheaters. And Maker's Mark is the most famous wheat whiskey, meaning the flavor grain is wheat. A lot of people theorize that Bill Samuels got his recipe from his friend Pappy Van Winkle, which is also the most famous wheat whiskey, Pappy Van Winkle. Most of you have probably heard of that. But if you want to try something different, I'd recommend you pick one of these guys up. This is a Weller Special Reserve. It's a Buffalo Trace product, also a wheat whiskey. And it happens to be the same mash bill that Buffalo Trace uses to make Pappy Van Winkle's. So if you wanted to get something that was a little bit more special, if you ever see one of these bad boys, I would go ahead and pick that up. That is a Weller Antique. So this is similar to the Special Reserve, probably got a little bit more age on it and a little bit higher proof at 107. And I don't care what's going on, whether you want to drink it or not. If you ever see one of these Black Label Wellers, go ahead and pick it up. It is a Weller 12-year whiskey at 90 proof. It's an easy drinker, very smooth. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but that wheat often adds like a softer, more approachable, what a lot of people would call smooth, which is the term I don't like to use. And a lot of people detect a more citrusy flavor out of it, and the vanilla kind of shines through a little bit more when there's not those spicier components that are added by the rye, like cinnamon and clove and nutmeg. Now, if you want to go big time and check out a big wheat whiskey, I would recommend you check this guy out. This is William LaRue Weller. This is actually just cash strength Pappy Van Winkle. It's not age stated, so we don't know how old it is, but it is amazing whiskey. Probably my number 2 whiskey of all time. Don't expect to walk into a store and be able to pick up any of the last 3 that I showed you. Occasionally, you'll find the Weller Red Label on the shelves. At this point, basically the Black Label is always hidden in the back, and the William LaRue Weller, you'd have to win some sort of a lottery to get the opportunity to buy that, or get on the secondary or something. But that one's not super hard to find in high-end restaurants that have a nice whiskey selection. And if you like Maker's Mark, you probably like any of the Van Winkle products. So Old Rip Van Winkle 10-year, Van Winkle Lot B, which is effectively the same thing as this, just super expensive. Pappy Van Winkle 15-year, 20-year, you may not like as much because it's more wood focused. And the 23-year, if you're used to the Maker's Mark, you may not like that. It's super wood focused. But anyway, just hope that helps you guys to expand your horizons, maybe get out there and try some more stuff. And if you have any other whiskeys that you'd like me to make recommendations for, throw it down in the comments. As always, we'd love to have you as a subscriber for Bourbon Real Talk. We release this shorter content that's just bonus content, but we also have our full-length episodes. And we'd love to get your feedback on those as well. So you can check us out at our website at bourbonrealtalk.com, on Facebook at Bourbon Real Talk, Instagram at Bourbon Real Talk, and you can find us on any podcast player. So as always, love you guys and talk to you soon.